Okay, folks, to keep things a little bit light this afternoon, I have another story. This one takes place down at Randolph again and involved a friend of mine, Rick. Now, Rick was a fighter pilot, and when he retired from the Air Force, he also put in a whole slug of applications for the airlines. And I'll tell you what, they don't often reply right away. Sometimes it can take 6 weeks to 3 months or whatever before you hear from them. And then all of a sudden you'll get 2 or 3 replies inviting you to an interview right away. But anyway, during this time, Rick started to concern himself with getting hired, and he was just beside himself. And eventually his wife told him, "Listen, why don't you go out and look for something to do, just to kind of get out of my hair." So he checked the classifieds, and he didn't see anything that really appealed to him until one morning he woke up and he saw where the Sesame Street School was looking for a bus driver. And he thought to himself, well, that's relatively simple. It's not, I could do that. That'd be fine. So he went down, applied, and sure enough, he got the job driving the Sesame Street school bus. So he starts out one morning. They gave him his route. He's sit there, got this route, and he's driving on the route. And he's driving along, and he stops at the first stop, and this little chunky girl gets on, and she says, "Well, you must be the new bus driver." She said, "Good morning, my name's Patty." He kind of looked at her, and he says, "Morning, Patty." He says, "Just go back and have a seat." So he drives on to the next stop, and another chunky little girl gets on, and she said, "Well, hi, Mr. Bus Driver, you're new." She says, "My name's Patty." And he said, "Okay." And he's thinking to himself, wonder how this is going to go. So he drives on again to the next stop. This kid gets on, and he says, "Good morning, Mr. Driver." He says, "My name is Ross, and I'm special." Okay. Go back and have a seat with the other kids, so he does. Next stop he gets on, stops, this kid gets on, high fives him, and he says, "My name's Lester T, and I have bunions." So Rick gets to thinking, is this the way it's going to be? Okay, fine. So now he's driving along, and he sees these red and blue lights flashing in his rearview mirror. Oh, crap, what'd I do? So he pulls over, and this cop gets out, walks up to him. He says, "May I see your license and registration?" So Rick shows it to him, and the guy says, he said, "You blew through a stop sign back there." He says, "What in the world would possess you to drive through that stop sign?" And Rick says, "Oh, I'm sorry, officer." He says, "I guess I was distracted. I just didn't see it." And the officer says, "Well, look, you've got a pretty responsible job here driving these kids." He says, "You need to pay more attention." He says, "I can't imagine what you would see or what would distract you to the point where you drive through that stop sign." And Rick thought to himself, and he looked down at the cop, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you what it was." He says, "I was driving along, and he said, I looked in the rearview mirror, and all I could see was 2 obese Patty, Special Ross, Lester T. picking bunions on the Sesame Street bus." Just that simple. Take care.